Long before Omega became a sanctuary for criminals, before mercenary gangs like the Blue Suns, Eclipse, or the Blood Pack carved the station into their own little kingdoms, before Aria T'Loak ruled the depths of Afterlife, it was simply another asteroid drifting through the darkness of the Terminus Systems. At first glance, there was nothing remarkable about it. A cold, lifeless mass of metal and rock, no different from the countless asteroids that filled the region. But hidden beneath its surface was one of the galaxy's most valuable resources, Element Zero. Long before humanity had even discovered fire, the Protheans had already found the asteroid. The discovery promised huge potential. Mining operations were established, and the Protheans began tearing into the asteroid in search of its riches. But the asteroid was harder than they anticipated. Beneath its outer layers lay an incredible dense metal crust, so thick and so resilient that even one of the most technologically advanced civilizations in galactic history struggled to break it down. Every attempt to break the impenetrable crust failed. In time, the effort was too costly, which led the Protheans to abandon the asteroid. For thousands of years, it drifted silently through space once again. The Protheans were gone, and whatever wealth remained hidden beneath its surface seemed destined to stay there forever. Then, the asteroid collided with another massive asteroid. The impact shattered its hardened shell, splitting the asteroid apart and exposing enormous veins of Element Zero that had remained sealed away for millions of years. Suddenly, what had once been an impossible mining operation became one of the richest Element Zero deposits in known space. News spread quickly. Mining corporations raced into the Terminus Systems, hoping to secure fortunes beyond imagination. Independent mining companies came next, gambling everything for the chance to strike rich. Cargo haulers, engineers, merchants, and construction crews transformed the fractured asteroid into one of the busiest industrial sites in the region. But wherever wealth appears, others are never far behind. Smugglers, pirates, mercenaries, then those with nowhere else in the galaxy to go. They went to the asteroid. They would come and steal from the miners, to prey on the weak, or simply to disappear beyond the reach of the Citadel Council. Without realizing it, the miners and corporations didn't just uncover one of the largest Element Zero deposits in history. They had laid the foundations for the most infamous station the galaxy would ever know. And it was known as Omega.
Try it and you'll be scanning the inside of her colon.
While humans refer the asteroid as Omega, to other races, it translates to something else. For Solarians, it's the place of secrets. For the Turians, the world without law. For Asari, the heart of evil. And for the Krogan, it's known as the land of opportunity. But Omega was never truly governed. It was conquered. The earliest known ruler of the station was a Turian. Little is known about him, but for a time he controlled Omega and its growing population. However, his rule came to an end. A Krogan crime lord challenged him, killed him, and according to some stories, ate his heart and wore his skull upon his armor. Whether every detail of the story is true hardly matters. What matters is on Omega, reputation is power. And the message was clear. The Turian was dead. The Krogan now ruled Omega. For a time, the Krogan's rule went unchallenged. But by 1980 CE, another figure had begun to rise through the station's criminal underworld. Her name was Aria T'Loak. She was once one of the Krogan's most trusted lieutenants. Yet, Aria eventually challenged him to a single combat. And when the fight was over, the Krogan lost. Omega now belonged to Aria. And now there was a new message on Omega.
Don't fuck with Aria.
Power here is not inherited. Power is taken. But while rulers rose and fell, Omega itself continued to grow. The station's original asteroid was slowly consumed from the inside out. The metal-rich core was mined until almost nothing remained. And the resources extracted from the asteroid became the foundation of the very station itself. The asteroid was hollowed out and rebuilt from within. Its resources became the raw materials for new buildings, new facilities, and entire new sections of the station. Over time, construction spread across every exposed surface. And when there wasn't any more surface left, new buildings began to go outwards, giving it a similar look to a jellyfish silhouette. Omega became something almost impossible to describe as a single place. It was a city, a mine, a fortress, and a refuge all layered on top of one another. New structures were built over the old ones. Different species brought their own technology and architecture. Entire sections of the station developed their own identities. Batarians, Borgia, castaway Solarians, and countless others who had no place or desire to live within Citadel space. Omega was no longer an asteroid with a mining operation built into it. It had become a world of its own. But Omega had no government, no laws enforced by the Citadel, no council to appeal to. The station belonged to whoever could control it, and for decades, that control would belong to one Asari, Aria T'Loak. But even Aria's rule would eventually be challenged, because on Omega, every ruler eventually discovers the same truth. There's always someone waiting to take your place. For decades, Aria ruled Omega. She had defeated the Krogan who came before her. She had survived the countless criminals, mercenaries, and rivals who sought to challenge her. And over time, Omega became more than simply her territory. It became her kingdom. But every kingdom has a weakness, and eventually, someone found Omega's. In 2186, the Reaper War began. Across the galaxy, entire civilizations were being pushed to the brink of extinction. Yet, at the same time, something else was brewing. From research facilities beyond the Omega-4 relay, husk-type creatures known as adjutants were transported to Omega by Cerberus. And once on Omega, they were set loose. They invaded Omega. The station descended into chaos. The adjutants would infect others with their Reaper technology, causing those they infected to turn into adjutants themselves. And once infected, there was only one cure to stop the transformation: decapitation. Omega fell into chaos even more now, even reaching the doors of Afterlife itself. But the attack was the only beginning. A Cerberus fleet soon arrived under the command of General Oleg Petrovsky and Colonel Raymond Ash, helping to take out the adjutants and those who stand in their way. Then once the adjutants were eliminated, Cerberus revealed their true objective. They planned the chaos. They planned on showing up just in time to save Omega. No, rather, they showed up in time to take Omega. Aria attempted to unite the station's various factions against the invasion, for perhaps the first time in its history, or second if you count Archangel.
A little target practice.
Omega's criminals were forced to fight together, but Petrovsky had anticipated her response. Rather than simply attacking Aria's forces, Cerberus took the station itself as hostage. The general threatened to destroy Omega piece by piece, level by level. Life support systems could be shut down, entire sections could be destroyed, and thousands of civilians could die. Aria had spent decades building her power on Omega, but now, that power meant nothing. She could either continue to fight or surrender. Aria chose the only option that would allow Omega to survive. She surrendered, and the Queen of Omega was exiled from her own kingdom. Cerberus took control of the station, but controlling the station didn't mean you controlled those who were still on it, because Cerberus quickly began pushing Omega beyond its limits. Its mining facilities were overworked, its infrastructure was strained, and across the station, resistance began to grow. Among those resisting Cerberus were the Talons, led by Nyreen Kandros. They were not powerful enough to defeat Cerberus alone, because they didn't need to, because Aria was coming back, and she was not coming back alone. Aria began preparing to retake Omega, but she knew that attacking Omega directly would be suicide. Cerberus had surrounded the station with a fleet. Its defenses have been upgraded. Its streets were filled with troops and mechs, and General Petrovsky had transformed Omega into a fortress. And for that, she turned to the one person she knew that could change the balance of the war: Commander Shepard. Aria captured a Cerberus cruiser in advance for her mission, and their goal was to get inside the fleet surrounding Omega. And then, at the perfect moment, Aria crippled the fleet's flagship. Her own forces surged through the mass relay. But Petrovsky has been waiting. The defenses of Omega had been upgraded far beyond what Aria expected. Her fleet was getting torn apart, and her army was forced to land on the station in escape pods. The war for Omega would not be won in space, it would be fought in the streets. Aria and Shepard began their campaign by disabling Omega's defenses, but as they fought their way through the station, it became clear that Cerberus had transformed Omega into something else. Force fields divided the station, mechs patrolled the streets, Cerberus troops controlled entire sections of the asteroid. Omega was no longer this hub of mercenaries and gangs. No, now it was a prison, and beneath it all, the station itself was beginning to fail. Cerberus had been siphoning power from one of Omega's primary reactors to maintain its occupation, but the machinery had been pushed far beyond its limits. The mines were being overworked to exhaustion, and if the current rate of mining continued, the equipment would fail within a matter of weeks. Omega was being consumed by the very organization that had claimed to control it. At the same time, Aria and Shepard would then meet up with the Talon's leader, Nyreen, who also happened to have a history with Aria in the past. And with Cerberus being a common enemy, the Talons joined Aria to take back Omega. Nyreen, Aria, and Shepard would eventually reach the reactor, but Petrovsky had anticipated their arrival. Force fields trapped the group inside, and even after Aria managed to open a path through the barrier that only Shepard made it through, Petrovsky left Shepard with a difficult choice. Once they arrived at the reactor's main control panel, shutting down the reactor immediately would disable the force fields, but it would also cut life support to large portions of Omega. Civilians would die. Taking the time to reroute the power could save them, but every second spent doing so gave Cerberus more time to overwhelm Aria and Nyreen. There was no perfect solution, only consequences. And that was the reality of war on Omega. The station had always survived by sacrificing something: its resources, its people, its rulers. Eventually, Shepard disabled the reactor. The force fields fell, and for the first time since the occupation began, Omega was no longer completely under Cerberus control. But the battle was far from over. The civilians rose against Cerberus. Aria's forces and the Talons joined the fight. And across the station, the people of Omega began their revolt. The war that Aria had begun as a campaign to reclaim her throne had become something far larger. It was now an uprising. Cerberus attempted to destroy the station rather than allow it to be retaken, but Aria and Shepard managed to prevent the destruction of Omega. The resistance advanced, section by section, street by street, until the fighting finally reached Afterlife. But the battle came at a terrible cost. Nyreen ran ahead of Aria and Shepard to help civilians in the front line. During the fight, a group of adjutants threatened to overwhelm those who were there. Nyreen knew what had to be done. She sacrificed herself to destroy them. The leader of the Talons was dead, and Aria saw it happen. The Queen of Omega was no longer fighting simply for her station. Revenge was all that she could think. Enraged, Aria charged into Afterlife. The club that had once served as the center of her power had now been transformed into General Petrovsky's command center. But the general was waiting. As Aria rushed into the fight, she fell into the general's trap. A stasis field activated and held her in place, leaving Shepard to fight Cerberus alone. Petrovsky brought out his own adjutants that he could control to fight Shepard. Shepard fought through the Cerberus forces and controlled adjutants, eventually deactivating and destroying the stasis field, releasing Aria to help join Shepard in the fight. The man who had taken Omega from Aria was finally defeated. Petrovsky surrendered, calling off all aggression with his forces, and with Cerberus forces standing down, the occupation was over. Aria would then choke Petrovsky for her revenge. He would plead for his life, saying he will give information on the elusive man, and when Aria dismisses him, he begs for mercy, asking for the same mercy he showed Aria when he allowed her to leave Omega. What happens to Petrovsky depends on Shepard's actions. You can either save him from Aria's wrath, or let Aria have her revenge. Once it's all said and done, Omega belonged to Aria once again. As for now, Aria T'Loak remained its queen, and after everything that had happened, she made one thing clear. She would never lose Omega again. But in the darkness of the Terminus Systems, there was always another rival, another army, another war, and eventually, Another person who believed they could take the station for themselves. Because that was Omega. It was never peaceful, it was never safe, and it was never truly under control. But for those with nowhere else to go, Omega was home. And as long as there were people willing to fight for it, Omega would always survive.